What is up? What's going on? My name is Arvind Ram Krishna. Welcome to Driven to Draw. This is episode number 5. We're going to be talking to product designer John Bleau about broadening your creative outlet. I thought it would be important to get into different perspectives about art, design, and expanding your creativity. And there are several people out there that have skill sets, and some people know how to use them in different ways. And John is one of those individuals. So don't miss this. This is going to be awesome. So I'd like to welcome a personal friend of mine. His name is John Bleau, and John Bleau is currently a studio manager over at an automotive seating company called Magna. John has been working at Magna for how many years now?
A little over 10 years now.
Over 10 years. Now, John is a real special talent. John and I have gone way back where we used to work at another seating supplier way back in 1998. In fact, he started way before I did. And I had just joined the studio, and I just remember, it's just a really funny story because I remember looking at John's work and being so intimidated by his talent. I mean, the guy was, and still is, he's just phenomenal. He's a phenomenal artist. He's got a lot of versatile skills. He's not just a designer. He's really dabbled into a lot of different techniques from comic book art. He's just taking a lot of his passions that he has loved ever since he was younger, and he's matured that process and created a really unique hobby out of it. And this is something that is really important when you start to work. When you start to work professionally, and you are, whether you're a designer or an engineer, people start to find avenues of creativity. And the name of the game to be able to think and to ideate and to innovate is to really find different streams and different ways of thinking. And that's why I wanted to introduce and invite John onto this podcast, because he's really got such a special talent. We're just going to kind of dive in and talk to John about his background and what he's done in the past, and what were some of the influences and things like that from his past that has driven him to pursue the avenues and the goals that he's achieved in life. So anyway, John, I'm really, really happy to have you here. And this is just, it's really awesome actually to reconnect. It's been so many years, and John lives really close to me too, so that's another added bonus. So let's just talk about your background, John. At what age did you get started and discover that you really were interested in drawing and cartooning, doodling, and things like that?
I was pretty young, actually, when I started to draw, and I think that's not so unusual, people that do like to draw. When you asked, what was it like, though, the school that I went to, grade school and so forth, they didn't have art programs. And so a lot of the sketching that I didn't come from reading comic books and things like that. And I have a story that I always told my kids that, back when my bedtime was 8 o'clock, I had to go to bed. Mom wanted the lights off. And I had this little old calculator that when I punched all 8s into it, it glowed. It had LED lights for the numbers, and I would use that with my pillow propped up under my chin, and I would sketch. And then when she would come down the hall, I would throw the pillow over everything and pretend like I was sleeping, and I'd stay up way past bedtime doing sketching and drawing and recreating things that I in magazines or comic books or whatnot. So it's always been with me. I always like to draw.
How old? I mean, was it throughout basically your childhood that you were doodling and drawing and things like that?
Yeah, I'd be probably, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade. I started to do a lot more of it. But I can even remember in kindergarten, some of the assignments that we had. Of course, at that level, you're doing a little bit of writing, maybe writing 2 or 3 sentences, and then sketching a story that went along with it. And actually, my mom saved some of those old sketches done on the big kind of newsprint pad style of a trip to the zoo. And I was so proud of those hippos and those lions and so forth. But there was just always something about drawing that connected for me and made me feel comfortable doing that and expressing ideas that way.
And what was the kind of subject matter that you would draw? I mean, were you creating your stories, and were you kind of doing a lot of storytelling with your drawings, or were there particular subjects that really interested you more than others, or how did you kind of develop some of the storyboarding back then when you were young?
Yeah, I mean, most of that all came from comic books and, uh, that, and probably when I was 11 or 12 years old, I think it was, Star Wars came out, and we all watched Star Wars, and we all got the Star Wars sketchbooks, and that was just mind-blowing for 11 or 12-year-old to see Joe Johnson sketches and all that legwork that went into designing something for a movie. And the comic book stuff, that was all about drawing figures and people and expressions and things like that. And that really took with me. And but as we got older and through high school and thinking about what am I going to do for a career, we went to vocational. My parents took me to a vocational college, Oak School as it was called, and they had a graphic artists program, and they showed me around, and it was drawing appliances and radios and stuff like this. And at the time, that didn't interest me whatsoever. So I decided I was going to go into engineering. And yeah, so I started off in engineering. And I took a couple art classes, drawing classes and stuff as electives. And things changed when I met my wife. That's when things changed about how I approached art and what I was going to do for a living.
No kidding. What is it that changed? How did that change when you met Lorraine, and what is it about that that meetup, or when you met her, that changed your perspective on approaching it differently?
Well, the story was kind of funny because I was taking a visual communications class over at Center for Creative Studies. And this was a pretty unique school. It's a very small school, highly intensely focused in certain disciplines such as industrial design and graphics and so forth. And this all came about because of my wife and her experience with Cranbrook. And she said, boy, if you have an opportunity to go to a school, not that there's anything wrong with Michigan State. In fact, I loved it there. But she said, if you have a chance to go to a school that is very specialized, like a CCS, that carries its own benefits with it too. And she was very encouraging.
Yeah, and you were going there for at the beginning for engineering anyway, correct?
For Michigan State was engineering, yeah. And I thought, I was going to be an engineer, and this drawing stuff is fun, but what do you do with it? What do you do with it? And even my parents had talked about, the whole starving artist thing. And most of the people that go into industrial design, at least at my age, they never even knew about it until later in life anyway.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a unique thing. I think industrial design, a lot of people just don't really know about it. And I used to think that's kind of odd, because even now, I think it's gained a lot more steam. I think it's got a lot more momentum because people are more aware of products and aesthetics and things like that. But I think even back when I was going to school, I felt the same way, because people were going to, I went to a public school. I went to Purdue, and it was the same kind of thing, that people just felt that you needed to go to a place like CCS that was really heavily focused on developing, training your talent, right? I mean, really, it was really intense for you to go to school like that. But I felt the same thing, like you were saying, that it's not very well known, and my parents didn't want me to be a starving artist either. So how did you deal?
Well, by that time, we had a unique spread of brothers in my family, and one was a lawyer, one was a doctor, and one was a school budget director. And so we kind of covered different areas. And when I chose to go into the arts, it was kind of everybody had picked their own route. And so I got a little flack for saying, wait a minute, we got 3 years invested here already at Michigan State. But the story of the first class at CCS was how the girl in front of me was just introduced herself and talked about being at Michigan State for advertising, and the teacher had a poor experience recently visiting Michigan State. And he just railed on Michigan State's industrial design program and how terrible it was. And having no idea that I was from there, he kind of went on and on making fun of it. And he said, okay, let's get back to class. And he asked me to stand up and say where I was from. And I said, Michigan State industrial design. And I thought he would be a little embarrassed, but without really skipping a beat, he said, just get out of there. Just get out of there. It's a good school, but not for the program you're in. And that, and walking around CCS, during the summer program, they get rid of a lot of, during the summer classes, you see a lot of things that the students have left behind from this previous show at the end of the year show. And I was looking at things that sophomores and freshmen and juniors were throwing away. And I'm like, I don't even know how they did this stuff, and they're throwing it away. And I'm like, I'm getting close to graduation, and if I can't even understand, how they were able to get all this work done, how they were able to get things to look the way they did, and they're throwing that stuff away, I'm never going to be able to compete. So that's where I started really taking it seriously, and I made the switch over to CCS.
Did you have reservations when you made that switch and you saw all this talent, right? Because you had already developed your talent to a certain level, and then when you go to a school like CCS and you see all these students that are performing on an average at a very high level, what did that do as far as your confidence when you're going into the school? I think it helped you to probably realize that you wanted to take the plunge and get into the school. But once you got into the school, what were some of the struggles that you had as you started attending the classes, knowing that you had to make sure that you were performing at least as good, if not better?
Yeah. I guess that's something that was kind of unique. I mean, through high school, I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't a great student. I was in the B average level. And even at college, I started off good, but then I had trouble with a lot of the math and a lot of the other classes as we get closer and closer to the hardcore engineering classes. And so when I made that switch to Center for Creative Studies, all of a sudden, all these classes were just things I was so interested in that, I mean, I remember it being very, very busy, but I don't remember feeling like I was going to get run over or, all of a sudden it was like things were opening up, and now I could really do stuff that I was just really interested in doing. And grades didn't really become an issue anymore, because when you're that passionate about something and that interested in something, you just did it. You did it. And a lot of the students there, they were their worst critics and couldn't get this right. Oh, we got to, I'll do it again. I can't show it to class. I can't put my work up on the wall unless I'm, comfortable with it and feeling like that's an improvement. And so, it was busy. But I always had in the back of my mind too, I had an older brother who was going through med school at the time, down at Wayne State, and going through, if I get the terms right, it was residency or whatever. Anyway, no matter how many hours I stayed awake working on something, I didn't have to make a call about whether or not somebody got the wrong medicine or anything like that after 6 hours of being awake. So it all put things in perspective. It's like you can't go home and say, oh, I worked so hard, and when you're there going, yeah, really? And but it was, it really kept us busy, and but it was just, everybody was making stuff. It was a great environment to be in because everybody was making stuff. And you were learning as much from your classmates or the class in front of you as you were from any instructor, and many times much more. And that was just a very unique 3 years for me that that was really foundational and really good.
Do you think that even though that you felt that the engineering program and going through the math and going through the curriculum for the 3 years wasn't in the end what you were passionate about learning, do you feel that it made some sort of an indirect impact? I mean, I guess maybe on a different level where you've learned certain things, even in the engineering, that allowed you to think about things a little bit more analytically when you got into CCS. That means leveraging a little bit of that technical ability and to maybe approach things from a different perspective, that it kind of allowed. Did any of that, because I think that probably a lot of the drawing that you had done when you were younger probably helped a lot, right? Because you already had that interest. But as far as going through the coursework that you did in engineering, do you think any of that helped with that process of learning? Or it just helped in the way that this is not what I want to do, and I'm really passionate. I found my stride, and this is really what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think, well, I think there's a lot of things to be said for, and as we've talked about it in the past, there's a lot of things to be said for learning other disciplines or learning areas maybe outside of what you want to focus on, because there's a lot of crossbreeding with any sort of education. And as much as, I mean, I did not get into the engineering program. I was right at the cusp of when you apply, when I made the switch. But I got to admit, there were a lot of really interesting, I had some great teachers at Michigan State with physics and so forth. And it did give you a good foundation and a good perspective, to then branch off into other areas, I thought. And for me, I went to a very small high school. I didn't really enjoy high school a whole lot because of the cliques and the smallness of the school. So Michigan State was not just a good exposure to engineering and so forth. It was an exposure to a whole different atmosphere. You could always find somebody that you could connect with on such a large campus. And I loved, still stay in touch with some of the friends that were on the same floor, and some of my old roommate was my best man at the wedding, at my wedding. So Michigan State was kind of this nice transition of getting away from the social cliques and so forth from the small school and getting into a much bigger environment, and then learning some of the more technical side of education with some of the engineering prep classes. And so I felt like I had some good experiences. It was hard to leave Michigan State to go to CCS, actually, just from that social side too. But the things I picked up there, I think, really helped me quite a bit at CCS. I can't imagine coming right out of high school to CCS. That would have been a very, very difficult transition, I think.
All right, so that's actually pretty interesting, because I've heard a lot about that in regards to maturity level for people who are either attending CCS or schools like Art Center, that it really requires students to be, one, either they're extremely gifted and talented and they come into the school with already the work ethic and the talent, or people who typically attend those schools have already gone through a few years of college, or at least going through the process of taking classes and learning a little bit about themselves before they get into the school, because one, it's just really, really intense, and it really requires a specific kind of mindset to be able to survive in those schools. So, I mean, you think that's true, right? Because you've spent already that first 3 years in Michigan State and then to make the switch, you're a little bit older than some of the other students. Did you see a lot of other students that had come in from other schools as well?
Yeah, we had I think we had a good diversity in our class, come from different places and different age levels and different experience levels. And again, that was very interesting too, because Michigan State, we were all the same age. We were all coming from kind of maybe different parts of the state, but you had a lot more in common in some respects. And all of a sudden you're in a class and the age range could be 10 years from you to the next guy, and the experience level was very different and so forth. But and I, they really kept you busy but wanted you to learn, and they wanted to keep it pretty intense, whether it was reviews or whatnot, because they wanted quantity out of you. They wanted you to just pump out quantity, because they knew that you put enough quantity out and quality's going to come. Don't get they didn't want you to get too complacent with making one thing perfect or whatnot.
Yeah, right, because the main idea is that as you're going through that intense training, that's why a lot of people who kind of labor over a single drawing, they get very attached to it, and here they're really teaching you that you're going to be drawing thousands of these things. And every time you draw, you're just going to get a little bit better, a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit more mature. It's just a process. The end result is what you're going to be looking for, and that journey to that end result is always going to be a little bit rough. And you can't really be attached to the things that you're working on, because as soon as you're finished with that drawing, it's time for you to go to the next one, right? Fast forward to at Prince, when you joined them, what were some of the best moments of working in the interior design studio and now taking your expertise and now applying it to product design? I mean, you went through product design, correct? Not transportation?
Product design, yeah. The product design side, I had a choice at CCS whether or not I wanted to pursue product design or automotive. I did not have a strong passion for automotive, although that was kind of the higher echelon at the time of the school. If you were in automotive, you were, you had a higher spot. It was more prestigious and so forth. But I didn't enjoy the automotive side as much. I was never, and still am not, a car guy. The product side seemed to offer a lot of variety and a lot of interest in exploring different avenues. So that's where I really tried to focus. And but what was kind of unique about CCS, again, another aspect of it was the competition. At Michigan State, I saw that my classmates and I, there was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of helping each other out and being supportive and congratulating people on effort. And I don't say that like it's a bad thing. It was a very good thing. But when I went to CCS, although classmates were classmates and you wanted to support each other, there was also an overriding sense of competition that also kept you really trying to outdo your classmates quite a bit. And I think that was another aspect, that it was a nice balance of camaraderie, but also competition, so that kept things going.
Well, obviously, right? And that's what made the average of the students a lot higher than some of these other schools, right, that you're talking about, is that it is an intense school. The expectation is that you're performing. And anytime you get into the school like that, your chances of getting into a job of something you love and something you really enjoy is just going to be that much better, right?
Yeah, I know. And that carried over into the product side of things too. We were, as a product design major, we were always competing with the automotive guys too. So that kind of kept things interesting, and trying to do your best to compete.
I remember you done a lot of show properties for the auto show, and developing conceptual designs, really thinking outside the box and creating some pretty revolutionary ideas. What was that process like? What was that process like that now you were developing products and you were looking at feasibility of making sure that there are certain engineering constraints, but at the same time you had the flexibility of really being very creative and not really looking at things that had to be produced right at that moment, but looking 5-10 years ahead on what's the possibilities. What was that experience like?
That was definitely a high point. I mean, we worked on some production work often, and that's a good experience. But if you have the opportunity to kind of work in that middle ground where you're really trying to do like that next step, that's just out of range of what it is today, but maybe not so blue sky that it's too far out of reach for some people to appreciate. You know, that middle area is what we focused on in our studio. And when I worked for Rob Huber, he was really good at striking a balance and making sure that we were staying in that sweet spot of just maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of where we thought the industry was going or where we thought the product should go. And Prince, just like GCS, was a pretty unique experience. We learned a lot. We learned a lot in the time that I spent at Prince. And you come out of school, you think you know what you're doing, and one of the first projects we had I remember, was a shifter. We were doing some advanced shift-by-wire floor console or whatever, and I did these swoopy sketches, and I thought they were really cool sketches because I was more into the sketching than actually building something. I liked the graphic side of things, and I handed it to a fella named what was his name? Don Watcher. He was the model maker. He was a little older than me, quite a bit seasoned, and he just ripped my sketches apart up and down. How do you expect me to make this? What do you mean? Which line do I go on? This is so sketchy. This is so, and first you're insulted by it. But then, he was just taking the kid and just kind of giving me a few. Yeah. I'm not here to do the work for you, bud. You got to sit here and tell me what you want to really build. And it taught me a lot. That first experience just taught me a great deal about communication and what you really have to convey when you're asking somebody to do some work for you and build something that you're trying to get them to build. And that carried over onto all the auto show builds that we worked on, and you kept refining that process. And it's that communication, whether you're talking to a model maker or whether you're talking to someone who needs to understand what your concept is really trying to do or prove or say, how well you communicate that visually, how well you tell that story. It was very, very important. And it was wonderful to get a chance to work on these auto show properties like that at Prince. Because I had 3 or 4, I think it was under my belt, and that was a good cadence, and you just learned a lot about how long things really take and what do you need as a team and how you get things done. So it was a great experience. It really was.
Yeah, I think Prince was definitely very unique. When I interviewed over there and I joined, I was pretty shocked. Just the ambiance and just the professionalism and the quality of the work, the people, and just it was actually very intimidating. You go into the tech center and it looked like a museum. The whole studio area just as far as an aesthetic, to be able to work in a place like that right out of college for me was pretty incredible, especially being surrounded by so many talented people. And again, even coming out of engineering school and having both the design and engineering background, it was really special to see a company that really embraced all the disciplines. And it was one of those special moments that you have these visionaries that didn't feel that design is the only important part of getting the project done. It's really a combination of all the different disciplines that are working together as a team to kind of understand each other and put out great product. And they understand that you have to have that balance between the designer, the model maker, the engineer, that liaison, to be able to find creative solutions.
Well, I mean, Prince spoiled us a little bit because the quality of the engineers, whether it was engineering, salespeople, industrial design, I mean, there were some common threads that held all the groups together. I mean, every company has its pros and cons and so forth. But since I've been out, and even with the acquisition through JCI, those first few years at Prince, the amount of synergy and the way people work together and the common attitude of really surpassing whatever was done before really kind of spoiled me, I guess. Because that was, I remember my mother even used to tell me, you don't know how good you have it. You don't know. I'm like, oh, mom. But it was, I haven't found that type of environment and that type of attitude towards work.
Absolutely. A really incredible place. It was a very special place. Now, fast forwarding to, you've been in the industry for more than a couple decades, right? I know it's hard to think about it and looking back and say, holy cow, we've been working for so long. But now you've gotten into other passions, and what are the kind of things that you feel is necessary to kind of break that monotony in that process because we're always constantly learning. We're always going to be students, lifetime students, and I think it's always important to sort of challenge ourselves, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in our area of expertise. It can be about learning something new. And I think that's what's really interesting about some of the projects that you've been kind of outside of your area of expertise. So I want to talk about the comic books and your engagement and giving back to the community and getting involved with elementary schools and inspiring young students. I think it's such a wonderful way to give back and to excite the youth, and even excite the teachers that are watching you visually show your talent and show what you can do when you think creatively. So let's talk about your book and how you got involved.
I had kids. It's good. No, I think, again, not to backtrack, but Prince was all about really, it was a good combination of learning things new and then applying them. But as I moved on in my career, that wasn't always the case. So you still have to find a way to get some creative input to feel like you're not being stagnant. So, when the products and the technology wasn't something that we were diving too deep into, then I started focusing more on tools and learning more about Alias or 3ds Max or Maya or After Effects and some other things, and trying to get some creative juices going with at least learning new tools and finding maybe new ways to tell old stories about, there's only so many trunk storage projects you can do before you're done. And so, and when I had kids, I really wanted I wanted them to see their father sketching and know that this is a big part of what I do, and it's something we can share together, and kids just love it. Kids love to sketch. It hasn't been beaten out of them yet, and it's something that you can really share and work together on, and it's fun. It's fun. And our schools, the Plymouth schools that my kids go to, they were very open, inviting parents to come in and talk about what they do and talk about specifically art. They have a program connected with the Community Arts Council here. It's called Art Parent. And when my oldest was in kindergarten, the program is set up where you can go to the Art Council, pick up portfolios of different artists, and then take them into the school to talk about art. Because I was in an artistic field, I said, well, let me just go in and draw with the kids. And we created special little, sometimes I'd go in and we'd roll paper on the floor and do a big mural. Or other times I would sketch with small groups of kids as they fed me ideas of, 40-legged Bigfoots with ribbons of hair or whatever, who knows what it would be. But what I remembered so much about my first exposure at CCS was one of the teachers. His name was Clyde Folds, and he would just do a little demo, and seeing him sketch, seeing someone that really knew how to sketch right there in front of you, make something come alive on paper was just very impacting to me. And I felt that if I could go in with these kids at a young age and just really demonstrate this is what you can do. You can do a lot with just a piece of paper and a pencil. You can create a whole emotion. You can create a whole product. You can convey an idea really with simple tools. I really like the idea that I would have that opportunity to share that with, and to be there with my kids, and share those visits. I think that was a lot of fun on my part too, because they were always part of the show. I'd have them pass stuff out, or we joke about what we did at home and how we're going to do this in class and whatnot. And if you get a chance to do that, I know I'm looking at your sketches in the background there. If you ever want a pick-me-up, you go into a kindergarten, first or second grade class, and you draw something, and they will, you're the best drawer ever. And they come to you and they're just amazed, and they're so, sometimes you get beat down at work. They don't want your idea. They don't think it's going to be feasible. You got to deal with all these issues, and then you go in and you draw a couple smiley faces in second grade, and they think you're just amazing. And that can carry you for months, You got to do it. You would love it. You'd be great at it. You'd be awesome. You would be awesome at it. And it is. It's a great feeling of getting in there and seeing their reactions, and seeing them get excited, and they come running up to you. They got to show you what they did, and
that is fantastic. I don't think there's anything that can beat that kind of emotional response, especially from the children. And I think it's almost like you're a hero, right?
I go into that class and I'll get a hug.
Oh, that's awesome.
You went to work and got a hug. Come on.
You'll get a punch in the face, actually.
Yeah.
All right, so you're working with the elementary schools, and then after some time, you had sent me your book, Super Cow, this comic book, and folks, I got to tell you something. When I say that John is a prolific sketcher, he is pretty incredible. I don't think I've seen. There's some professional comic book artists that don't draw this good. It's really out of this world. I looked at, John had approached me and said, hey, I finished up this comic book, and I want you to look at it because I know you like comics too. And I said, yeah, I'll have a look at it. And I was so used to seeing a lot of his automotive sketches and interior design sketches and things like that, and I thought, okay. And I'd seen some of his portrait drawings, and I thought they were just awesome. He hands me this book, and I looked at it. I said, "So, who did all this stuff for you?" I said, "What comic book artist did this?" Because I have never seen somebody that's not a comic book artist put this level of talent and quality into this work. It is simply incredible. And I think that's one of the things that we'll have some images too on our show notes to show you the kind of work. But it's also a really interesting story because it's not just an ordinary comic book. I mean, his approach and the execution and the involvement of the school and the students. I want you to kind of set the stage for this, John, of how you thought of the name, or actually the name came from, I think, one of your teachers. But just tell us the story about Super Cow and what the comic book is about. How long did the project take? And just tell us what's really unique about this, because I thought it's just an awesome idea.
Well, there were a number of things that kind of came together at once, and the teacher that we're talking about, this was a second grade teacher, and the kids just love, both my kids had him, and they both love him, and he's just a fun guy. And he had this character that he would tell the kids about, Super Cow. He'd even dress up as him for Halloween and so forth. And he had an arch villain that was the EVB, Evil Villain in Black. And the teacher, Mr. Lloyd, would disappear into the bathroom and come out with a black hat and cape and cause a little mayhem. And all the kids would get all excited saying, "That's you, that's we know who you are." And, "No, you don't." And of course, he would have no recollection when he returned normal out of the bathroom with no cape and no nothing, no recollection of anything that happened, and so forth. So the kids they just loved it, and it was a lot of fun. And at the same time, I had been going into the classrooms and sketching different things, but I saw what they were doing in class, which was, can you tell a story? Can you write something? How was your reading comprehension and so forth? And as a designer, it's kind of hard to go in and say, okay, today we're going to draw a floor console, or today we're going to, it's not exactly kid-friendly and exciting. So we started drawing monsters and robots and characters, or I draw a scene and say, who lives in this scene? And it started to evolve. And then I said, well, what if I do a few pages of a comic book and have the kids, fill these things out? And so the first comic book had 3 pages with a bunch of empty pages. And then I come in the next month or so, and I had like 6 or 7 pages with some empty pages. And the kids were actually saving the books, and the teacher supported it too, which was helpful. But they'd come in, I'd come in, and out from their desk, they'd pull these books. And some had been coloring them in, others had been doing some story work on it and so forth. But it gave us an anchor to talk about storytelling and to talk about character development and stuff like that. And I selfishly gave me a deadline to kind of think about, okay, what should I do? What should I do next? And it ballooned from a few pages, and when I got to about 9 pages, I'm like, hey, I could actually turn this into, I could actually finish this. And that I was motivated to finish it for the end of the year to show the kids a finished story. And so I just kept sketching and kept working on it, and before I knew it, I had a little book done. So
I think the other thing that's really incredible about this book is just your knack. You have this natural ability for comedy and writing, because I really found it was just so funny. The stuff you had written on there, some of the things I just felt that, how does he even think about all this stuff? And I'm thinking that working with the kids and getting all these ideas, it probably helps in your creativity, because we live in a world of rationality, right? And sometimes we struggle to think creatively. And when you're in the company of all these children that don't have those boundaries because they're not constrained, they're just not there yet. They're not in the maturity level, so they can think of all sorts of things. Do you find that kind of helped you with this process when you're putting this together?
Well, the kids, my kids had quite a few suggestions as we went through there also. But I guess what it made me kind of think about, I guess a little differently, was just how emotional their drawings can be, expressions can be, what I thought was funny. Sometimes they didn't think was funny at all. And one of the pages I have a cow passing wind, and they thought that's hilarious, and you have to kind of modify your perspective a little bit of, hey, this is really, I can be a lot more playful. I don't have to try to be all clever and stuff. I have to, remember who this is for, and can I just do something that's fun, and goofy and playful.
Yeah, you had one where you said you got the idea of the meter or something like the bad meter, which was really cute.
The little evil robot's got a switch on his back that's goodness to badness, and that was Natalie. She said you should have a switch, and we just switched the back and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's a different product. It's and I remember talking to some of the guys over at Prince before, and I mean, look at what you're doing with your website and so forth. I think when you create things, you want to have that noticed. You want people to enjoy these things. You want people to see them. And very often in the work that we do in advanced studios and stuff like this, nobody ever sees it, or very few people see what you do, and you spend hours and hours and hours doing stuff that very few people ever see. And this was a chance to do a product or do something that would be seen by many people, and you get that immediate feedback and you get that excitement, and it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding when someone really, especially a kid, and kids, they don't hold a lot back, They'll tell you, this is stupid. This is dumb. Oh, this is funny.
How's it been received from parents? Have they seen the book yet?
I don't know. I mean, I handed out all the books to the second grade class, but that was right before the end of the year. But most, I mean, that's what is kind of strange, because it's not, most of my neighbors, they are, they're either engineers or they're in a technical field or whatnot, and you pull out a comic book, and I don't think they know what to make from that. And, for as long as I've been here and I've been going into class, my wife will connect with one of our kids' friends, moms or dads or whatever, and she'll say, oh yeah, here's something that John did and so forth. And they're really kind of like you, kind of amazed, like, well, he had this done, or who did this, or no, he sketches, he draws, he does, different things. And sometimes they don't know how to process that, I think. And so, yeah, I'm not a musician.
I think, part of the problem also is just that we're living in a world and a society that is, we're so preoccupied. You got a husband and a wife that work, and they're taking their kids to their classes or sports activities. And I think that the things that I want to push on this website with Driven to Draw is to help people to take some pause, not be connected on Facebook so much, and just take some pause and do things with your kids and do things for yourself. And that being creative doesn't even mean that you have to be a professional artist or anything. Sometimes that the journey of discovering your talent and is to kind of go back and engage in some of the childhood dreams that you may have sort of lost. that going back and even sitting down and taking a pencil and a piece of paper and just trying to create for the sake of creating and to generate ideas, it's a really very important and I would also say an intellectual process. It really is. Drawing is an intellectual process. When you look at some of the great artists in the past, you look at Rembrandt, and you look at Renaissance man Leonardo da Vinci, who was not only a scientist and an innovator, he was just a master artist. He had so many skill sets of envisioning things in the future and innovating and generating so many different ideas that I'm just quite frankly shocked at what he envisioned for the future that is now there today. Airplanes, things that he was sketching. I was just, holy cow, this is pretty amazing stuff. So I think because people are just so busy and they're always on their phones and they're always on social media, that getting these small pleasures, whether you're playing a musical instrument or just being able to draw and just enjoying that process, it does do something for your mind. It does something. There are definitely benefits with going through that process and drawing. I think people can really discover things that they didn't know that they could accomplish, and I think I think it's awesome, and I think that a lot of people aren't able to process things because they're not mindful of it. They're not mindful of it, and it's hard for them because they're just extremely busy.
I think that's true. But yeah, I know. I think that that for me, drawing has always been something that kind of relaxes me, and no matter how intimidating a blank page is, once you start to scribble or something, there's always an unexpected success that comes when you sit down and sketch. Something, the way you shade something, the way your hand slipped or whatever, and very often I had a teacher that told me this, and it's really true. He says, right at that point where you're ready to crumple the paper up and throw it away, stick with it for 5 more minutes, and chances are, you're at that point where you're ready to give up. You don't care so much. You're not hypercritical about every sketch, every line. And that's the point where you kind of relax very often and really good things come out. And it's like you said, it's an intellectual process, but it's also a very intuitive process. And I just think it just puts you in a little bit more of a meditative focused state when you're sketching. And it really helps it helps me to kind of clarify thoughts that I'm having and getting everything down. Even when I'm in meetings, I have to sketch things out to connect the dots, to feel like I really understand what's being talked about, as opposed to just writing notes or something. It's just something that I've been doing for so long. So.
I completely agree. I think when you're sketching out ideas, especially in our industry, when you're developing products, that pictures absolutely really tell the story, and they're worth 1,000 words, right? Because something that's very descriptive and you're trying to get an idea across, we do a lot of talking in the meetings, but people just can't comprehend a lot of things that are being said verbally, right? Too much talking in the meetings and not enough ideating and showing people. But once you sketch something out for like 20 minutes, people can say that, hey, I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's a really, really powerful tool for people to engage in, because it really does get the discussion going, and it gets other people coming in and say, hey, I like that idea, but what if you can do this? What if you can add maybe this bracket to support this feature over here, and then maybe we can get this concept to work here. And it's been kind of like a test for me even at work when I do whiteboarding. And I know you do whiteboarding a lot, right? So when you get up on the board and you've got all these ideas, and I've even seen some of my colleagues who have gotten now inspired. They go up after I do all this whiteboards. Now they're doing a lot of drawing on the boards. And I said, it's liberating. I said, we don't do it that often. And because we're just conditioned to not do it, we're afraid to go up there and do these sketches. But once you start getting into it, it's just a really fantastic process. It's a process that really enables the creativity and the problem-solving process.
Well, I mean, we've been talking a lot about this at work. We got an intern, excuse me, got an intern this summer. And so whenever you have an intern, there's a good opportunity to kind of talk about your processes and what you're trying to do in a little different way, because you have someone there who this is all new for. And just the whole idea of sketching and how that relates to collaboration, how that relates to taking a group of people who are sharing ideas, and you've experienced this, I've experienced this, when you start to draw the ideas up, it changes the whole level of interaction and communication in those meetings. And it really allows everybody to see the same idea instantaneously and comment on it and make changes and so forth. And instead of all the wordplay and the hand waving and the miscommunication that often happens, it creates a whole different level of efficiency to sit down and be able to sketch your ideas and communicate clearly what's going on. And I wish more people took advantage of that and appreciated that. But to me, it's a huge advantage to be able to communicate in that way. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be, of course, a great artist and being able to sketch super detailed, super fast or whatever. Sometimes it's just being brave enough to do your chicken scratch in front of other people, and a lot of people aren't, But even that chicken scratch goes a long way to communicate an idea that the hand waving and the verbal just doesn't. And so yeah, I just see that as such a huge advantage. And even I talked about it with my wife that the kids are going to learn how to draw. It's just as important as learning a language or learning math to me. It's a form of communication. They may not choose to go into art or whatever. That's fine, but they're going to learn the basics of how to communicate on paper. I think that's important. I think that's vital.
I completely agree. Completely agree. Completely aligned. Now you've got. I want to give people because we want to wrap up here, but I want people to look at check out your website. John has a website called Trooper Treehouse. It's a terrific site, and he's got a lot of examples of his work. He's got several links. He's got an industrial design link. He's got a page for sketches. He's got his comic books pages. And then he's got a blog called Notes from the Trail, where he actively posts some of his sketches as he's, any ideas that sort of come to mind, or if he's just doing a quick portrait or just creating in general. And it's, I started looking at his blog, and it's just funny. Even though I sketch, for some reason I still get intimidated when I look at his work, and it's really incredibly inspiring to see the development and how John has evolved, and not only just from the standpoint of sketching, but just as a person, to be able to give back to the community and to provide so much value for people and joy for students and for so many people, that John his site is really worth checking out. You really got to take a look at his work and provide him some feedback. He's a great guy. It's really fun to interact with him, and he's always helpful. So I do want to ask if you had if you had to give people some tips, and perhaps sometime in the future you can maybe offer them some sort of a how-to or something, but what would be if people wanted to get into design, or if they wanted to just start with drawing? Maybe they don't want to be a professional artist, or they don't want to be a professional illustrator, or they don't want to put that much time or energy into it, but they do want to get started. What are some of the tips that you can give, or some of the takeaways you can give to people?
Well, I
if they
mean,
want to learn how to draw?
if they want to learn how to draw, I mean, yeah, as long as the interest is there, I guess the biggest piece of advice I could give is just don't get intimidated. Don't. I mean, no matter what level of art you're at, there's always a level above you. It doesn't matter, with maybe the exception of a few people, but I haven't met them, and I probably won't because they're. But most everybody gets to a certain level, and you look to the level above you, or look to a new technique or somebody that's doing something, and it can get very intimidating. Why am I doing this? What value does it have? I'm not going to be great at it or whatnot. And you got to remind yourself, why are you doing it? If you're doing it because you enjoy it, because you get satisfaction out of it, and you got to keep focused on those principles. And like even this comic book, I remember as I started getting into some of this stuff, the guys that I was talking to in different groups, they told me the same thing. They just said, don't bite off more than you can chew. Start small. Do small little things, and just work your way up to something bigger. And I thought that was very, very helpful, because my tendency was to say, okay, how do I do a big book, or how do I do something that's going to last? And the first thing I started to do were these small little 8-page handouts for the kids, and I mean, they were very small, one sketch a page on how to draw monsters or something like this, or how to draw cars. And it's all about kind of building a little bit of momentum and building a little bit of a little bit of work level there that you can keep going to the next level and keep adding on to, I guess. So don't bite off more than you can chew, and don't get pessimistic. And keep your eyes open of what's going on at the level above you, and keep going.
Yep, and keep an open mind, for sure.
Yeah.
So John, this has been really awesome. I really enjoyed talking to you. I know that a lot of people who are listening in are also going to get a lot of value, and I think it's pretty inspirational, and it's very encouraging, and that's one of the things that we want to do. We want to encourage people to explore different opportunities and experiment. I mean, they should. I think investing in yourself and continuous improvement and learning is really important for everybody, no matter what your background or your discipline is. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer. It doesn't matter if you're a designer. And if you're a designer, go out and paint. Go outside and create something. I mean, it can get pretty monotonous to do the same thing, and you just never know when you're going to get your next best idea. You just don't.
And I think it's important to connect with people who have similar interests, because especially with drawing and art, it's easy to kind of shut away and get disconnected. And you need to find those voices that are encouraging you and interested in the same things to keep you motivated and keep going. So definitely, yeah, that's something I like to do.
So John, this was terrific. I really enjoyed it, and we'll put all your information in the show notes, and so people get links to your site, and so that they can engage with you. And again, I'd love to have you back and maybe talk about some other projects that are going on in your life, and maybe even just talk about creativity in general, and what are some of the new things that you're delving into, and sort of go from there. So once again, I really appreciate your time, and I know I learned a lot from you today, for sure.
Well, it was a pleasure. And again, seeing what you've been able to do with your career and with your artistic talent is just amazing. And to see all the things that you've been able to accomplish, and you scare everybody with your skills on sketching now. So
I don't know about that. And I tell you what, like I said, everything is a catalyst, and that catalyst started when I first looked at your drawings.
You're the master, man. You're doing a really good job. So
thanks, John. I really appreciate it.
yeah, no problem.
All right, until next time.
All right.
So I hope you folks enjoyed this episode. John is a terrific guy. He is so incredibly humble and approachable. And if you want to ask him some more questions, just head on over to his site. It is called troopertree.com. So www.troopertree.com. I put those into the show notes. And he's also got some free stuff. He's got like 7 ebooks, which is awesome. He's got them from perspective drawing, I think, with drawing cars for absolute beginners. It's some things that he was developing for even kids to kind of get involved. And he's got 6 other ebooks that are just worth looking at. I mean, his doodles and his sketches and just his style is something that you should really pay attention to, and it's worth taking a look. That's a wrap on Driven to Draw. Just a couple things before you go. 1, if you enjoyed this episode and found it useful, let me know your thoughts and provide me some feedback on iTunes. Just click on the link below on the show notes. I would sincerely appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. The second thing is, remember that I do believe in you. You can be creative if you set your mind to it. All you need to do is just try. Just creating a sketch every single day, spending 10-15 minutes a day, you're going to see your skills grow exponentially. Take that action. Peace out. I'll see you folks next time on Driven to Draw. Have a good one.